think for the future, depending on who you're playing. But how many games are you going to play in Europe compared to what you do in your national league?
I still think we discount these two games because this is still the playoff round. This isn't the Champions League proper. You're going to be playing against KAIRAT tonight, who, albeit we don't know much about them, but you're probably discounting these two games thinking Celtic do have enough quality to get through these two ties, especially with the strength and depth they have. And then obviously there were the questions that were posed to the manager yesterday in his press conferences. Does he have enough quality? And of course, he's got to trust the players that he's got at his disposal. How much of this team done for him? How much of the squad done for him? How many trophies have they won? So he's got to be, of course, he's got to be faithful to the players that he's got at his disposal and try and get the best out of them.
Yeah, and Kenny, listen, he said it himself there in that interview. They have to have complete focus on the job at hand. Forget all the frustration of the signings and all that. His job as a manager is to deal with the players at his disposal at this moment and get the job done and keep their focus, the high tempo, the passing, the movement, all the things we know that they can do. Tierney coming into the team, I think it's been a good bit of business from what I've seen so far. And I said a little bit different than how Greg Taylor played because...
Oh, it's funny, sorry to interrupt you there, it's just that world class... I think it maybe should have been rephrased as a world-class recruitment policy, but you look at it as a world-class transfer policy. I mean, what club can sell Kieran Tierney for 25 million and get him back on a free? That's great business.
Yeah, listen, I know they're doing fantastic business. Kick-off at Celtic Park is 8 o'clock. We'll get the thoughts of some Celtic fans in a couple of minutes' time. But let's break away for a few minutes and get some insight into a subject that comes up many, many times in this programme, the coefficient. We've been joined by Gavin Noon from the excellent Scotland's coefficient. Good evening to you, Gavin. Give us a summary of where we are at and how critical the situation is right now for Scottish clubs in Europe.
Good evening. Well, we sit 17th in the rankings as it stands right now, and where we finish the end of the season will then impact where the teams will enter in the following summer's qualifiers. So let's say, for argument's sake, we finish 17th or even 16th outside of the top 15, which, by the way, looks very likely. Everybody suffers. So take Celtic, for example. They've got one tie to get through to reach the Champions League. If we don't finish in the top 15, that turns to 3 ties to reach the Champions League. And then Rangers last night, obviously, they had 3 rounds to get to the Champions League. If Scotland finishes outside the top 15, that becomes 3 rounds to get to the Conference League. So no Europa League or Champions League, only Conference League. So it's a massive drop for the main 2 teams, the top 2, but also for everyone else. So if you look at St Mirren last season or Dundee United this season, they wouldn't enter Europe at all because we would only have 4 teams instead of 5. So it's absolutely critical that we try and get back into that top 15 by the end of the season.
Gavin, this would be that scenario, the doomsday scenario, would be for season 27-28, correct?
That's correct. So how we finish the end of this season impacts the following summer. So let's say Celtic win the league again in the season we're in right now, that's already locked in. So they've got 1 qualifying round next summer, but how we actually do in the coefficient this season, what rolls on to the next year. So season 27-28, as you say.
So what scale of job does Scotland have to get from 17th ranking at the moment to improve that so that scenario doesn't happen? Or is the die cast almost?
Well, the die is kind of cast, and it is a doomsday scenario, but it is retrievable. So in 15th right now is Austria, and that's why Dundee United's defeat on penalties last week was so disappointing, because had Dundee United won that penalty shootout, Austria would have lost a team and we would have kept all 5 teams in. So at the moment, they have a lead of 2.8 coefficient points, and that translates as about 7 wins in the league phase. So however many wins the Austrian teams get in the league phase, so let's say they get 4 wins combined, they probably will get more, but let's hope they only get 4. Scottish teams combined would need to get 11 teams just to equal the points difference. So that's obviously going to be a lot easier if Austria lose some teams in the qualifying round on Thursday night and Hibs win their tie. So if we can go in the league phase with more teams in Austria, there's a much better chance of us outperforming them by 7 wins.
Gavin, what's the difference in coefficient points that we receive for the 3 competitions?
And that's where there's always a lot of debate about whether UEFA do this right, because it's the same in each competition. So Liverpool, I think, beat Real Madrid last season, and that earned exactly the same amount of points for England's coefficient as when Chelsea beat FC Noah in the Conference League. So the individual matches are worth the same in all three competitions.
I mean, it's quite the thought, Tom, isn't it? If this scenario does play out for the season after next, what a shock it's going to be to the system. I mean, not even Europa League to consider.
Yeah, I know. Listen, it's grim. It's grim, and that seems to be a big. That Scotland's clubs need. I mean, to outperform the Austrian clubs, that is to that extent. That in that scenario, that's a mountainous task. That's Everest. You know, and I'd be struggling to see how Scotland are going to win that many more games than the Austrian clubs are. So this scenario that Gavin outlines here is very likely. Would you say, Gavin, what percentage likelihood are we talking here for 27, 28?
Well, cleverer people than me that simulate the matches 10,000 times have done exactly that, and they think that Scotland have about a 60 to 70% chance of not making the top 15, and that was before Dundee United got put out last week. So it's really unlikely. It would need Hibs to get in and do well, do better than Hearts did last season, and then I think it's Wolfsberger, one of the Austrian teams, or obviously Rapid Vienna, one of them to lose their Conference League tie to drop out of Europe altogether. So if we can go in with 4 teams against Austria's 3 and everyone does really well, then there is a chance. But even then, it's a long shot.
And Gavin, is it 27, 28? Is it a 3-year period then? Is it coefficient is for a 3 years, or is it just every year?
It's done over 5 years, that's where, when we had that disastrous season when Rangers and Celtic were both in the Champions League a couple of years ago, Rangers got 0 points and Celtic only got 2, so that stays on the record for 5 years. So that's kind of one of the reasons that's hindering it. But also, every year, the season from 5 seasons ago drops off. And because we had such good years, like 5 years ago, every season we seem to be dropping loads more points than the other teams, the other nations that didn't have as good seasons as we did. So it's looking unlikely that we're going to recover it this season, and because of the knock-on effect, it then might take a few more years to build it back up.
So would we be better if Celtic and Rangers went into Europa League?
That's a good point.
Drop down.
Well,
for the next 5 years.
Yeah, it used to be definitely to learn more, but the thing is now they've increased the bonus points just for reaching the Champions League. Wow. So to illustrate the point, it's a very long shot now, but if Rangers overturned the deficit to Bruges and went through to the Champions League and drew 1 game and lost 7, they would earn the same amount of coefficient points as if they won 3 games and drew 1 in the Europa League. Won 10 physical points in the Europa League, but only got 1 physical point in the Champions League. That's the same amount of coefficient points.
All right, so we'll stay in the Champions League, yeah.
Europa League,
I mean,
stay where we are.
Do you know what, it's really, Gavin, thanks for joining us. It's something we talk about a lot here, for the coefficient, and it's great to get some clarity on that.
Brilliant to describe.
Yeah, Gavin, fantastic. Thanks very much indeed for joining us on Sports, and that's Gavin Noon, fantastic website. He's got Scotland's coefficient. Have a look at that. So a lot at stake this season for our clubs with a view to season 27-28. Let's gauge how some Celtic fans are feeling this evening. We've been joined by Celtic supporters Paddy Sinnott and JP. Good evening to you, Paddy. How confident are you feeling about getting through this tie?
Good evening, Kenny. Thanks for having me back on. I'm quietly confident, but not overly confident, obviously, because we've had a bit of a dodgy track record in qualifiers before. But looking at the kind of team that KAIRAT are, I'm pretty sure that we've got enough in the tank to take a comfortable lead over to Kazakhstan next week.
JP, I know you're at the ground. Is there a sense of optimism there?
Yeah, there seems to be. First of all, good evening. Thanks for having us back on. Yeah, there seems to be a wee buzz about the place, as Paul McStay once said back in the day. I think that's the case for Celtic. Have been so successful over many years now, so I think that's the case. When most games come around down here, you kind of find that fans are looking forward to getting there.
Paddy, what are your thoughts on Brendan Rodgers airing his frustrations in public over the lack of backing he feels he's getting for building this squad?
I think it's probably he's just same as Celtic fans are feeling at the moment, Kenny, to be honest. I think it's difficult watching the club having so much money in the bank, selling kind of top players like Kuhn and Kyogo, and seem to be taking their time to replace them. And obviously when you hear deals keep stalling in the media or whatever it is that's happening with the potential transfers, that just adds to frustration. So it's probably just saying what the Celtic fans are feeling at the moment. I mean, what have they got left of the transfer window? About 10 days, 11 days or something, so there's time to kind of get players in, but ideally you wanted them in before this game, so that there wasn't a